Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Shelly, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their librarian, their principal. Tell the lunch lady. Also, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Brittney Traudt. She is here to celebrate the adventures of Shelly and Coco. Before we invite Brittney into the studio to tell us all about Shelly and Coco and where they're adventurizing, we would love for you to take an adventure and connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Also, please be sure to subscribe to our Reading With Your Kids channel on YouTube. Check out our Reading With Your Kids Pinterest page. Also, be sure, it's not up there yet, but coming soon, Drawing with Your Kids. You're going to love it. Illustrators from all around the world come to us and teach you and your kids how to draw a character from the book. Also, we'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button up at the top of the page, so let us know what we're doing well, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Connecticut. Our guest is here today to celebrate her wonderful picture book series. It's called The Adventures of Shelly and Coco. Please welcome to the show, Brittney Traudt. Hey, Brittney, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Brittney and I just had a lovely conversation finding out that she grew up near my cousin down in Florida, and what a really small world it is.
Very. In a town that not many people know about.
And I knew about it. There you go. Well, what I don't know enough about the adventures of Shelly and Coco, and I know the people out there listening want to know about it too. So tell us all about the series, please.
Yeah, so The Adventures of Shelly and Coco is an educational traveling series. At the moment, it does include 2 books that are currently out and published, but I recently announced the 3rd one is coming out on January 18th. So I'm working on that one at the moment. But to kind of go into each individual book, Shelly Goes to Summer Camp is the first book in the series. And this is kind of to get the relationship going of the 2 characters. So Shelly is a young girl, and she's going to a sleepaway summer camp for the first time. And she's nervous. She's never been away from home. She gets to summer camp, and everybody's friends and having a good time. And she doesn't really know anybody there yet. So one day she's out hanging out by herself, thinking about her family and her friends and what they're doing out at home. And she hears some rustles in the bush nearby. And out comes a parrot named Coco, who also got separated from his family. So they kind of make that connection in the fact that they're both, alone and don't really have any friends at the moment. And the 2 of them have a great time at summer camp. They go kayaking, participate in the talent show, friendship bracelets, all the fun and joys of summer camp. And then at the very end, Shelly is begging her parents to let him come home with her. So he does go home with her, and now Shelly has a pet and a best friend all in one. And then in the 2nd book, they go to Washington, D.C. So because Coco is a bird, he can fly all over the place, and he's been to all of these wonderful places before getting separated from his family. So he is an excellent tour guide full of tons of information. So in Shelly Goes to the Capitol, which is the 2nd book, they do go to Washington, D.C. They sightsee monuments, so they go to the White House and to the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial and learn a little bit about history along the way. What does the Supreme Court do? Did you know there's an underground subway down there so people can get to and from the buildings without having to go on public transportation? So kind of a little bit of fun facts there. Different things about, monuments history, U.S. history, American history. And then in the 3rd book, Shelly Goes to Massachusetts. Shelly's actually studying for a test for school and is a little bit nervous about not remembering all of the information. And Coco believes that seeing is believing, and hopefully by seeing it, she will believe it and will therefore be more likely to remember it. So that being said, they're on their way to Massachusetts, and they are going to walk the Freedom Trail, visit Plymouth Rock, witness the Boston Tea Party, and so much more. So that way, when Shelly goes back to school for her test, she will have an all A's and correct answers.
Wow, so much going on with Shelly and Coco.
Yes.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I hope I hope Coco takes Shelly to someplace other, that Plymouth Rock isn't the only thing they see when they're in Plymouth, because that's mighty disappointing. We had family come up from Puerto Rico, and they said, we want to go see Plymouth Rock. And I said, okay, what else do you want to do down there? Oh, nothing. We just want to see Plymouth Rock. I goes, oh, but you can go to the plantation. You can see the Mayflower. Yep. There's the city of Plymouth is really kind of cool. There's like No. Don't have a lot of time. We just want to see Plymouth Rock. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. And we went down there, and they looked, and they're like, that's it?
Yep. It's literally just one rock. Yep. So in this book, they don't go to the Mayflower, but they do talk about it in, how Plymouth Rock kind of came to be. So they do discuss it a little bit. I've personally been to the plantation, which I thought was awesome. I went a couple months ago, actually. In this book, they don't quite, because I didn't want people to think it was a book about Plymouth Rock specifically, kind of all-encompassing of Massachusetts and, kind of how important it is to history. Because I think while some people do associate it with history, I don't really know that they associate it with as much history as it actually holds. So they do have a little bit of Plymouth, a little bit of Mayflower, just not all-encompassing, unfortunately.
Well, that's really cool. Well, Massachusetts is a really, really fun place. And I know the book is going to be coming, so it's too late, but Coco could have taken Shelly here to beautiful Reedville.
Yes.
Reedville is a neighborhood in Boston, and it's a hidden jewel. And the thing that's so neat about it is that this 2 blocks from my home was a training ground from the Massachusetts 54th Regiment, the first all-black regiment, and they fought in the Civil War. And I just love mentioning it because those heroes deserve a lot of respect. They put their lives on the line to help free people who were enslaved, and many of them had been enslaved, and they were fighting it on both ends. They got it from some of their other Union soldiers, and of course they were fighting. So I just love those guys. Everybody listening, check out Massachusetts 54th, Reedville. You can see where the podcast is coming from. Brittney, what inspired you to write this series?
So I actually always wanted to be a writer, but I feel like in a way I always have been, just in different ways. And then COVID came and we were all stuck at home, and I was like, well, maybe now is the time for me to, kind of work on this. But what am I going to write about? And when I was 20, I actually made a goal to myself that I wanted to travel one new place every year, whatever that may be. And so far, I'm 26 now, and so far every year I've lived, with that, and I've accomplished it, which has been great. So I wrote a blog. I have a personal blog that I wrote, and I wrote about going to Washington, D.C. for the first time as a solo traveler by myself, 20 years old, no idea how the metro system worked. It was a mess. But people loved it. It was a hit, and even to this day, people will tell me, that's the best post you've ever written, was that post about you going to Washington, D.C. So I guess with that, I kind of, my blog is more, adult readers, because, adult readers are the ones who are online typically. And I wanted to kind of take that experience and also put it out there for children. So funny enough, geography and history were my most disliked subjects in school. I was a math kid all the way. And I kind of almost feel like if I had learned about geography and history in the way that I, aspired to write it in my Shelly series, that it would have caught my attention a little bit more. I would have been more interested than I was, just reading out of a textbook. So I kind of put a twist on different things that I think makes it easier for kids to understand and kind of retain. So I wrote the books that I wish I had when I was a kid, that I wish I was reading in the way that I wish I could have learned when I was a kid.
Now, Brittney shared a little bit with me about the town where she grew up, and I know that it's a small town, no metro system where you grew up. Certainly not. You're near a big city, but not a real urban city like Washington, D.C. Where did you get that courage to say at 20 years old, I'm going to go to D.C. by myself?
Yeah, so funny enough, it was actually supposed to be a trip with one of my friends in college. So I was trying to surprise her with a visit to the White House, because if you don't know, you can go to the White House for free. At least that's how it was years ago. I'm not sure if they've changed it since then, but you essentially fill out an application form or a submission form online, and you get put on a wait list. And I had applied for the both of us to go 6 or 7 months ahead, and then one day I got an email that we got accepted and we were going, and I was like, this is so great. And then plans fell through, and unfortunately she didn't end up coming with me, and I kind of had two options. I could either cancel my trip and not get the chance to go inside of the White House, or I could go and kind of just see what happened, and from there I went. So I was actually only in Washington. That's the reason that I went there was, for this specific visit to the White House, and I stayed there for about a day, so I arrived super late at night. I woke up, in the morning, went to my visit, and then kind of just walked around DC all day. And then I was actually leaving that night, and then I came to New England. And then I spent about 2 weeks up here in New England. I did, Massachusetts and New York and Maine and Connecticut. So I had kind of done all of New England, but was making that one pit stop in Washington, D.C. first. So it kind of, I think, was a pro and a con that I was only there for one day, because on the pro sense, at least it was only one day. So even if it was a very hard one day, it was over, in 24 hours. But on the con, I wish I had been able to spend more time there, because I think it would have been more character building than it had already had been, more experience. And I, of course, have gone to Washington, D.C. since then. But yeah, I kind of just, I planned this trip, and it was going to be a surprise, and things just fell through. And the way that life had it, I decided to just go by myself. I could go or I could not go, and I choose to go.
Well, good for you. Good for you. But I think that's a valuable thing. There's so many times in life we make plans with our friends and colleagues and whatnot, and a lot of times those plans, they fall through, and life throws us a curveball. And for a lot of people, they just kind of say, things ain't going the way they're supposed to be going, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tap out. And I think we miss, people who make that choice. And I've probably made that choice on occasion. But I think we miss out on some wonderful adventures.
Yes. Very, very good. It's really important, I think, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And a lot of times, everybody loves being comfortable. It's what it's where you've been. And change is hard. So, being uncomfortable is uncomfortable, and nobody likes it, but from that comes a lot of great things, I think. Mm-hmm. So it might be hard, it might be challenging, but there's no growth in doing the same thing that you've always done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned, so in a lot of ways, Shelly and Coco are following your path and the places that you've gone to. After Massachusetts and Boston and the Freedom Trail and Plymouth, where do you want to bring Brittney and Shelly and Coco?
Yeah, so I actually leave a little sneak peek at the very end of the book to kind of give a hint of where they're going next. So without giving it away, I will say they do seem to be hiking somewhere in a canyon at the very end.
I think I just drove through that place a couple weeks ago. So cool. Hey, you are an adventurous person. You gave us a little hint about where Shelly and Coco may be going in book number 4. What places do you dream of visiting yourself?
Ooh, I mean, ultimately I want to go everywhere. I would love anywhere and everywhere that I possibly can go. I don't know where I'm going yet in 2023, and I plan it, but I don't plan it. So instead of saying, I want to go to this place, unless it's, of course, something that, I 100% want to go for a certain time or event or something that's going on, I kind of try to keep it open. So instead of picking a certain place, I kind of just look for wherever's the cheapest to fly, honestly, and then plan my trip from there. So instead of, it kind of gives it that adventurous, spontaneous kind of, feeling, because I don't really know where I'm going until I know where I'm going. Ultimately, I would love to go out of the country. I haven't really been yet. I've been to the Bahamas on a cruise, but that's not quite the same, I feel, as, traveling and, walking around and spending time in the actual country, versus just a few hours. So, bucket list, I would say Iceland and Australia for sure. But I really want to go everywhere.
That's awesome. My beautiful wife and I took, it was 2018. We were talking. I said, where do you want to go? And she said, I don't know. And she was a teacher at that time. She had a globe in her classroom, and she just spun it like that, closed her eyes, went like this, and she said, Panama. And everybody thought we meant Panama City, Florida, and it's like, no, we're going to Panama City, Panama.
Yep.
And the response we got was, why? And it's like, well, because that's where my wife's finger landed when she spun the globe. Yep. And no one could believe that was how we made the choice, but it absolutely was how we made the choice. And we had a great, great time.
Yeah. Yeah, those are honestly the best trips, I think. So yeah, same idea, but instead of a globe, I go where the money flights are cheapest. Because typically, especially going out of country, and even nowadays, the flights are really kind of the most expensive part. Mm-hmm. Once you get there, you can do, transportation and food and where you're going to stay and stuff like that, especially out of country. Typically, those tend to be the cheaper, part of the thing, but leaving out of here is the most expensive. So I go where the trends go, and whichever one is the cheapest to get me there.
Oh, that's really, really wonderful. What's the reaction been to the adventures of Shelly and Coco so far?
Yeah, the reaction's been really good. People really like that it's educational. The illustrations are fun. I get a lot of comments on the Capitol book in relation to the Washington Monument. So in the book, I actually put that the Washington, Shelly makes a comment that the Washington Monument looks like a giant pencil. And a lot of people ask me, how did you think of that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just put myself in the perspective of a kid, and if I saw the Washington Monument, it looks like nothing other than a giant pencil. So I think the Capitol book does get a lot because it's the educational, and I do think it has really resonated with kids, as far as being entertaining and fun and kind of teaching them without them knowing that they're being taught kind of way.
Yeah. I love that. I think that this would be a really fun series for a family, especially if a family's planning a trip to one of the places that Shelly and Coco have visited. What other kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading your books?
Yeah, I think open conversations, especially because, the Capitol and the Massachusetts book kind of are big history, books to kind of learn about. So in the Capitol, you can learn about, Abraham Lincoln and how he worked to free the slaves, or the Supreme Court and how vital they are to our government and passing laws. I think it kind of opens the conversation where you can teach in a way that, is appropriate for kids to be able to understand, but gives good value and importance. So, government-wise for Washington, D.C., but even in Massachusetts, the Boston Tea Party is a huge event that I don't really know how much it's touched upon in schools, really. Personally, that's my favorite part of this book, is because they're actually going to witness the Boston Tea Party, which I think is really awesome. But kind of putting it in a perspective that kids can understand how we got to where we are. So certain events in our history were very vital for us to become the country that we are, for us to become, the people that we are today, and kind of opening that conversation to kind of let them understand it, if that makes any sense.
Sure, yeah. One of the things, I have to put a plug in for my beautiful city, the Freedom Trail, Boston. One of the neat things about Boston is that you can literally walk to all of these different places. It's a really very, very walkable city, and the Freedom Trail itself you can do in a day, and just all these very important, very historical sites around the city.
Yeah, it's only a couple miles long, so there's many stops along the way that I think people might not really know the importance until, you learn about it, you walk it, you see it, you read about it. So like they'll stop at the old State House, and, the Declaration of Independence was read there, and the Boston Massacre site, which, I don't know how many people know. Some people say that was actually started by an accident, but was really important to our history and becoming the independent country that we are. Mm-hmm. Boston Tea Party, of course, is important, and kind of where we got there, a lot of people speculate that that's why we drink coffee as Americans versus tea, is because of that. So there's kind of a lot of fun facts that you don't really know about until you're looking into it, and I don't know how often people look into it, but that's kind of why I wanted to put it in the book and kind of make information known that may not be known, or that many people may not go out of their way to look at. But yeah, only a couple miles, and very, very fun, very important, very scenic, I would say.
I walked more than a couple miles going from the parking lot at Epcot Center into the front gate. So, yeah,
yes.
A couple miles for the Freedom Trail. That's
Easily.
Pretty easy. Hey, I've shared this with you, Brittney. I think I shared it on the podcast in the past, but we've hosted international kids here in our home. And one of our daughters from China, I took her around when she first landed here in Boston. One of the things we did is we went on the Freedom Trail, and we're in front of Paul Revere's house. And I said, this building's like over 300 years old. And she wasn't impressed. And it wasn't until we got home and I Googled her city in China and learned that they have bridges that are 1,200 years old. And I thought, oh, okay. All right, I get it.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's why she wasn't impressed.
Not impressed at all.
300 years is nothing.
Hey, people are going to be impressed if they go to your website. So where should they go to find out more about the adventures of Shelly and Coco?
Yes, so my books are available on Amazon, but if you want to go to my personal site, you'll be able to find the books as well as more information about me, and that is my last name, Traudt, so Traudt, with an S at the end, and then 2 cents, TWOCENTS.com, and that'll bring you to my main site. If you do /books, that will bring you specifically to the books. You'll be able to get the Adventures of Shelly and Coco bundle if you are new to the series, so that would include the first 2 as well as the new one that's coming out, or you can buy any of the books individually on there or on Amazon. I'm also on Facebook at writer Brittney Traudt, Brittney Traudt on Facebook, and then Instagram Brittney Lee, so BrittneyLee_96.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Adventures of Shelly and Coco, a great series from our guest, Brittney Traudt. Hey, Brittney, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Wow, talk about a great guest. Captain Bill Pinkney will be on the show. He sailed around the world by himself. He's the first black man to circumnavigate the world in a sailboat by himself. He's also one of less than 20 people from the United States to do it. Probably one in less than 70 people worldwide to do it. It's a fascinating, he wrote a children's book about it. It's just a fascinating story. I'm amazed by it. He's a great guest. You don't want to miss it. Captain Bill Pinkney, the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, please do visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We would love to help you celebrate your book to the world. You can be a guest here on the podcast. It's fun. It's easy. It doesn't cost a thing. You can also submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. You can also take part in our monthly promotion program, and we can celebrate your book with commercials here on the podcast, messages to our 100,000-plus social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. And we have a new feature of our monthly promotion program that you're just going to love. because I don't think it's available anywhere else. Certainly not as affordable as we are offering it to you. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Brittney Traudt. Please be sure to check out The Adventures of Shelly and Coco. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Glory Grady, Mirabella Q, Jordan Saley, Stephanie Davila, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.